We are now talking about global governance, and before I try to define somehow this confusing but inevitable notion, let me say that my formulation, global governance acts through institutions versus market, doesn't mean at all something as stupid as the, let's say, the abolition of market. It rather means a re-regulation of the markets, first of all of the financial markets and in particular global markets, in order to prevent such market failures as in 2008 and with effects that we are still affected by right now. And in order to, let's say, reconcile the market dynamics with political projects such as, let's say, a project aiming at reducing unemployment, which has been a major perverse effect of the crisis. Well, governance can be two things. Oh, I mean, the scholars do mean two different things by the word government. Either in the sense that human affairs are somehow managed by coordinated actions taken by institutions, both state institutions and non-statal institutions, and this is what, for instance, the United Nations have tried and also have achieved with the Millennium Development Goals we have already evoked. In this case, government is regarded as a subspecies of governance, as a tool that governance can use or not use according to the circumstances. But it is also true that the word governance has come up some 20, 25 years ago as an alternative to government, in the sense that where existing governments are not capable of handling a certain problem, both domestic and global, the problem is nonetheless, to an extent, dealt with by this impersonal actor, impersonal, let's say, statesman governance. And a fully different, a pretty different meaning of the word governance can be found in those scholars who endorse a system theory of society and politics, and they regard governance as a fully unintentional effect of mostly uncoordinated actions or impersonal mechanisms such as market mechanisms. In a word, governance as a performance of the system, not as a performance of human actors. You may define governance the way you like. 3 points need to be taken note of in any case. First, global governance is closely tied to the notion of international regime, which is an informal or semi-formal arrangement governing a certain realm of action. Famous is the non-proliferation nuclear non-proliferation regime, but there are so many international regimes in the field of environmental policy, and there are so many bank agreements that coordinate the governance of this enormously complex world, which is the world of international finance. In any case, governments, by definition, lacks any enforcement by force. It's not lacks the main characteristics of enforcement within the state. Second, in our multipolar world with several major poles of power and resources, both in economy and politics, there are preconditions for a successful global governance. The main precondition is multilateralism of the governments. That is, is easy to understand, the opposite of unilateralism. The acknowledgement by a government that it is not the only or the main or the most powerful and respected actor in international relations, that it needs to be recognized in its role by the other governments, and it needs to negotiate with the other actors on a level of parity. The other precondition would say, according to our experience of the last 30 years, is the active role of the international civil society, which is in this case not the civil society I spoke about in part 2, not the Scottish Hegelian civil society, but is the network of, let's say, civil society organizations on the global level, such as Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Greenpeace, and everything. They have had and still have, and I hope they will keep having an important role in, at least as in writing new problems on the agenda of world politics and on the agenda of global governance, which, in my view, as you certainly have noted, is not the devilish invention of American imperialism. Some people believe it is. Lastly, national sovereignty is far from dead, even in Europe, but national sovereignty makes sense nowadays only in the framework of global governance, not just in the development, but also, I think, in the developing world.